before he stepped down. A reshuffle is expected in the coming few days.
I came here all the way from Upper Egypt because all I want is an end to corruption. We want this government changed. We don't want Mubarak's party members in power.
It is true that we need to be patient, but at the same time, we need to remind the government and whoever is there that we are still in the streets. And we still have a lot of other demands that they need to pay attention to.
And until they see the country's 30-year emergency law lifted and the thousands of political prisoners released, many say they will keep the pressure. Rawi Rageh, Al Jazeera, Cairo.
Well, still to come on this programme.
I'm Jonah Hull in Johannesburg, South Africa, where we meet some of the victims of so-called corrective rape, the violent sexual abuse by men of lesbian women with the aim of turning them straight.
And the Australian state struggling to recover from record flooding.
Hello there. In the western parts of the states, it's still very, very wet at the moment. On the satellite picture, you can see this whole chain of cloud working its way towards the northeast. Torrential downpours, particularly in the southern parts of California, where the ground is baked dry. That means here there could be some mudslides and landslides in the next couple of days, as this rain is set to stick around. Meanwhile, further east, it's been very, very warm over the past few days, but now the temperatures are easing once more. So New York this time, no higher than 6 degrees and quite a biting wind to make sure it feels colder than that. And Washington, D.C., quite a decent 13 degrees as a maximum, but even that's down on the temperatures we've seen recently. Now, a bit further south, and for many of us here, it's fine and settled. But there are some showers here being blown onto the shore. These from Honduras and then all the way down through parts of Panama. And there will also be 1 or 2 rather hefty showers there for Colombia as well. But I think the northern parts of Colombia should get away with a dry day. As we head across towards Europe, it's in the Mediterranean where we've got some of the stormiest conditions currently. This huge area of low pressure is still developing as it runs its way eastwards towards Turkey. And it will be the western parts of Turkey and the western parts of Greece where we see some of the worst conditions out of this. Meanwhile, further west, we've got another system piling in here, so heavy rain through the UK and all the way down towards Spain and Portugal.
The Pyongyang Film Academy hosts some of North Korea's brightest young stars. What does it take to serve a national propaganda machine? 101 East examines the privileged lives of the country's elite. 101 East, at this time on Al Jazeera.
On counting the cost, food, why does it cost so much and how many more millions are being priced out of the basics? We'll hear directly from the World Bank for its take on an ongoing crisis. Plus big business, as Nokia and Microsoft join forces, we assess the tech market. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
Hello again, a reminder of our top stories. Witnesses have been telling Al Jazeera they think at least 70 people have now been killed during the demonstrations that have been taking place across Libya. They say security forces in the city of Benghazi and some other towns in the east have now left the streets. People are calling for Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi to step down. In Bahrain, meanwhile, the security forces have attacked protesters for a second time. Dozens of people were wounded, some critically. When forces opened fire on the crowd, the ruling royal family has called for dialogue and calm. But it's a different picture in Egypt, where thousands of people spent the night in Liberation Square to celebrate the success of their revolution. The country's ruling military council, meanwhile, has said it will not tolerate any more strikes that disrupt the economy. Now, the United States has vetoed a resolution in the United Nations that would brand Israeli settlements as illegal. The resolution had the backing of 14 out of the 15 members of the Security Council, but was still defeated because of the US vote. Washington has instead offered to support a weaker, non-binding presidential statement. that would reject the legitimacy of Israel's settlements. The US ambassador to the UN said the veto shouldn't be seen by Israel as support for continued settlement building.
Our opposition to the resolution before this Council today should therefore not be misunderstood to mean we support settlement activity. On the contrary, we reject in the strongest terms the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlement activity. Unfortunately, this draft resolution risks hardening the positions of both sides. It could encourage the parties to stay out of negotiations and, if and when they did resume, to return to the Security Council whenever they reach an impasse.
Well, Kristin Salumi has been following the events at the UN Security Council for us.
The Palestinians decided to proceed with this resolution despite intense pressure from the United States to not bring it to a vote. For the week leading up to this, there were negotiations and offers from the United States to support a weaker presidential statement, but the Palestinians decided to go ahead. They said they did hope for the resolution to pass, but wanted to bring it to a vote. They felt that they had the support of the great majority of the international community here. And in fact, the United States says that it too is against settlement expansion in the Palestinian territories. In defending their vote and defending their veto, they said that they felt this resolution would actually have the opposite effect of what was intended. It could actually promote more settlement expansion in the Palestinian territories and would make the peace process more difficult, hardening both sides in this. But clearly this decision, this vote, puts the United States in an uncomfortable position with the international community.
In Iran, thousands of government supporters have been calling for the execution of opposition leaders following last Monday's rallies. During the Friday prayers, a senior cleric said the opposition has lost its reputation amongst the people, and he called for restrictions on the opposition leaders Mehdi Karoubi and Mir Hossein Mousavi. He wanted to prevent them from communicating with supporters. And in Iraq, the government has imposed a curfew in some parts of the country after protests. In Basra, in the south, protesters blocked a bridge. They were calling for the provincial governor to quit and demanding better services and jobs. And in the city of Kut, protests ended with the storming of a regional government headquarters. At least one teenager was killed in the clashes that followed. That city remains under curfew. Now, a research campaign by some groups in South Africa has showed that a woman living in that country is more likely to be raped than taught to read. In 2009, more than 68,000 sexual offences were reported in South Africa, 1 every 8 minutes. In the first of a two-part series on sexual crime in the country, Jonah Hull looks at the problem of so-called corrective rape.
They will say I'm trying to be a boy, that I even steal their girlfriends. So no wonder I got raped. Serves me right, that's what they'll say.
Last April, in a South African